Hello, everyone. I'm Jean-Claude of Young Mystic, and welcome to this very, very special, deep woo-woo episode entitled Beyond Alta with Clif High and David Morgan. This is the Silver Woo, the long-awaited episode. Let me first introduce Mr. Clif High. You can find his work at Clif_High at Twitter and also on his BitChute at Clif_High. Clif, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Jean-Claude.
Right. And also, of course, the Silver Guru himself. He is the author of the Silver Manifesto. You can find his work at themorganreport.com and also here on YouTube at The Morgan Report. Mr. David Morgan, welcome to the show.
Jean-Claude, thank you.
All right. Guys, I say this often. I'm always excited to have you guys on the show, but now I'm really, really excited, doubly so, because both of you are finally here. I've been trying to do this episode with you guys for a couple of months. And of course, as you know, I've lost 2 YouTube channels and 1 Patreon channel with all of this crazy censorship around here, and life intervenes. But I finally got you. And you know what? As Clif usually says, universe provides. And as you have it, timing is everything. And we're just now entering these crazy, crazy times. As Clif calls it, it's woo time. So I'm really excited to have both of you on to discuss everything silver and what's happening in the world right now. So Clif, let me start with you. I did a promo video last night on YouTube asking the audience to start by watching it's the Woo Time video from your BitChute channel and also Woo in Consequences, just to get a framework for their conversation here today. But that being said, we're going to try to distribute this video here far and wide, and we might have the opportunity to reach a brand new segment of normies out in the population. So I want you to take 2 minutes here to explain 2 concepts here, just to lay down some track. The first one is the concept of the overwoo that we find ourselves in right now, and also the concept of devolution, what it is and where we are in that process. So let's start building down some track on that, and then we'll move the conversation over to the financial system. Go ahead.
Right. Well, they're intimately connected with the financial system, both of them, okay? Because it is the system, the financial system, that is used to enslave us all and has been for centuries. And they obscure that. It is the obscuring process that forces stuff out into the woo. That is the place where everything is hidden from us. Everything we hide from ourselves, everything that society hides from us, everything the universe has yet to reveal is out in the woo. We live in a framework, a paradigm that was created by these individuals, by these people, over a long period of time with a deliberate intent to enslave our minds by trapping us in this paradigm. The overwoo is where everything that's been hidden, everything that's been shoved out of the paradigm, the suppression of gold and silver prices, the killing of JFK, all of these things, anything you care to name that you cannot provide fact and surety to is out in the woo. And now in the overwoo, that paradigm is breaking down to the point where the stuff that has been suppressed is now going to overwhelm the framework itself and destroy the framework itself. So as I like to say, you can ignore reality as long as you want, but you can't ignore the consequences of ignoring reality. And we're at the consequences stage now. So they're going to keep denying reality, but here we are, drowning in its consequences. And we can provide hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of daily examples of the overwoo taking things over. One recent one would be the singer, the rapper Nicki, with the swollen balls episode, right? Okay, all of these kind of things are just individual examples of stuff coming out of the suppression and overwhelming the mainstream media. So in a sense, devolution is merely part of that process. Overwoo is the organic nature of reality doing this to us from universe. Devolution is a designed framework by continuity of government planners to keep government persistent through an overwoo, to keep some level of functionality so that during the overwoo, when everything is coming out, all these secrets are being revealed, we will have some point to anchor ourselves to that will be solid and secure as we go through this, and from which we can rebuild. Devolution is the removal, the removal of power from the pinnacle of the pyramid down to the lower level where it belongs. And in that process, we isolate the bad actors that have captured the power structure itself, and we expose them for all of the populace to see. And that, again, is part of the overWoo, because within that, devolution is an active magnification of a natural process. It would be my understanding that devolution, the goal of devolution would occur even if no one took any action, merely because of this overWoo would accomplish it. However, devolution is a designed mastery approach. So they're harmonizing with what's going on now in order that they might guide the boat. So you can just let the boat go down the river, or you can paddle and go a little bit faster than the current, which gives you the ability to steer and navigate. That's where we're at right now with the devolution. They are steering and navigating us and rapidly advancing our progress in order to maintain that ability to steer and navigate.
Okay, so just for clarity, again here, for perhaps some of the normies who are hearing this for the first time, they perhaps have heard other terms out there like the good guys, like Bix Weir would talk about. Tie that in a little bit here and explain to the audience here how much has been put in this effort of devolution, who's behind that, who's been working behind the scenes, and perhaps why all of this is coming to a head where this self-organizing collective that you're framing it as is going to be coming out in the open and meshing with the rogue elements of society here to achieve the same objectives. Talk about that a little bit.
The nature of so in the 70s or 80s, it actually, if I actually hunt back, I think it began the day that Kennedy was assassinated in '63. That's when the SOC initiated itself. It was loosely organized and incoherent until sometime in about 73 or 74. And that was as a response to what Nixon had done in taking us off the gold standard. And so the SOC has been organizing and growing since then. There may be quite literally millions of people involved in this self-organizing collective at some level. They've been planning for all of this time to operate in a war to upend the capture of humanity by this particular mindset, we can say, that I refer to as the bug. And it's just in a placeholder for the mindset. You could call it communism or whatever you wish, but it is intent on suppressing and controlling all of humanity. And so this self-organizing collective is international, it's military, it's intensely focused in the United States, it's very active. The self-organizing collective's plans are such that they will soon be more visible, and their own visibility will be used as one of their shock elements, one of their weapons, so to speak, because that alone will excite a response in a great many people that otherwise would not wake up. But we're very close to reaching a critical mass. There are mathematics involved in this. The SOC is aware of the mathematics, as is their enemy, the deep state, the bug. And we're very close to having actual confirmatory mathematics that we have won. It is just at that point simply necessary that we keep on keeping on, right? So we know that the American Revolution was essentially won when 3% of the population of the United States, or of the American colonies, the 13 colonies, decided that they would be independent. It only took that 3% committed to it. Then there was shortly another 3%, and then 9%, and et cetera, and it grew very rapidly. We are in a very large level of percentage now, very close to what the SOC is considering as their tipping point for more open activities. This will include activities that may happen today on the 18th, all right? Mm-hmm. And so these we're right in the middle of the warfare, the active stage of it, the emergence of it, because and here's something else. We won't see the SOC emerge first. Their point, all of their movement is to expose the deep state, okay? So they will allow the deep state, and they are going to prompt the deep state to do things in order to further expose themselves. And at a certain point, then the SOC will be easily, naturally able to say we're the ones that they're attacking, and it'll go from that point onward. And I think we're very close to that within mere weeks. But we're actually at the breakout in the open of it all. So we will see that there will be a simultaneous effect when they reveal the audits from Arizona and the other information coming out of Georgia and some of the other states. But so it'll be a 1, 2, 3. There will be like 2 or 3 bits of information around the revealing from Arizona. At that point, we will also start seeing this sympathetic reaction in the precious metals markets, because there will occur to everyone in the trading world that we've now reached the point of being able to confirm the illegitimacy of the leadership class globally, because it will spread, the idea will spread. If it is confirmed that there was cheating here in the United States, the most sophisticated system that's also used in the rest of the world, then the authority in Australia is illegitimate, the authority in Canada is illegitimate, the authority in Europe is illegitimate. When that starts spreading out, the natural response of the population will be exactly the same as was in the 1780s when the French Revolution erupted, and there will be a sucking sound as all the precious metals just come out of every channel everywhere and go into everybody's pockets and holes in the ground, because that will be the ultimate sign of uncertainty.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that. Now, let me bring David in. When I first had this idea of putting this episode together, I wanted to bring, of course, the silver guru, the technical analysis into the woo, and the woo into the technical analysis for everyone to see in one-stop shop type of episode. Now, David, in your book, The Silver Manifesto, you get into basically educating the population as to what is silver and how the rigging is occurring and how and why it's happening. Now, in our last series, you and I produced this video here, The Death of the Petrodollar. You got into the details of how we moved into the petrodollar, as Clif just said, in 1971, as Nixon took us off the gold standard, and what we've just seen now happening between this agreement between Russia and Saudi Arabia, perhaps supplanting that original deal and setting us up now for the emergence of something new. And as Clif calls it, we don't necessarily want a new system, but we want this new organic economy to take place, this human organic economy. So can you take a few minutes here, David, and explain to the audience how you understand this evolution here through the first gold standard, the silver certificates, this petrodollar, and where we find ourselves here today. So for the audience who've never heard about this, get a good understanding of the evolution, a retract of what's happening right now with our financial system.
All right. Well, that's put a lot on my plate. Before I forget, I would like to just add a bit to what Clif said, and it's because it just came to my mind, but the SOC, the Self-Organizing Collective, you might call it the good guys, Bix would probably frame it that way. A friend of mine, John Leffler, years ago said, and I think it's a great analogy to what we're talking about here from the big picture, is near the end, they, meaning the deep state, the wolves in sheep's clothing, will have to shed their cover, run stark naked to the finish line. And that's an add-on to what Clif said. Everyone will see it for what it is. It will be that aha moment, as Clif already discussed, that almost everybody will wake up. And that's, I guess, the tipping point where all of a sudden, where that sucking sound comes, because there's no way out other than getting back to reality. And there's nothing more real than, in the monetary realm, there's nothing more real than physical precious metals that have held value for obviously thousands of years. So back to you unpacking what you gave me on my plate, Jean-Claude. So the quick version is that after World War II, and the hyperinflation was part of the reason we got into it, there was the Bretton Woods Agreement, and everyone agreed that there's a new standard. The standard is the US dollar, but the dollar is tied to gold at a fixed price, and that's $35 per ounce. So there wasn't a lot of currency exchange. Everything was pretty much based upon a fixed exchange rate between their currency and the US dollar, because that was fixed to gold. And of course, the United States started to renege on that contract, meaning that they were printing more pieces of paper than there was gold to back it up. And then the poker game went on, and France, being one of the primary ones, said, okay, we're at the poker table calling your bet, give us gold. Here's your paper. Mm-hmm. And of course, that forced Nixon, and I understand from Bullion Star, Ronan Manley, who's done some really excellent work for the community, that Great Britain was also kind of on top of it as well. And that was kind of the final push according to his research. Regardless, they had to close the gold window. And of course, as governments do, they'll never admit the truth. Of course, it was the nasty speculators that was the reason they had absolute nonsense. And of course, it was temporary, and here it is 50 years later. So what do? And the idea is you want to maintain the monetary power. And that's largely at that time, and still continues in my studies. And it's hard to know. I don't think anyone knows exactly, but I call it the Anglo-American Alliance. It comes out of London, basically, London, Zurich, and New York. And this triad, you might say, of money power from the Bank of International Settlements and downward. And there's higher regions than that, but I don't want to go too far in this discussion. So the money power had to be maintained. How did it maintain? Well, Kissinger told Nixon, I got this plan. We can be a protection agent for the Saudis, because the Saudis were not trusting the U.S. dollar. Just like in the movie Rollover that you can Google and probably watch for free, the Saudis were saying, I don't trust your dollar. We've got oil. It's valuable. We know it's valuable. The world runs on oil. Since we're in the kingpin position, we'll take gold for our oil. And so that had to be circumvented. So Kissinger went over and said, look, if you take paper dollars instead of gold, we will give you protection. And so they made that deal. And the deal was not only do you have to take dollars for oil, everybody has to use dollars for oil. The whole world is pegged to the US dollar. And so now we unpegged from gold and we repegged to the US dollar. And that kept the money power, the Anglo-American Alliance, in power. And that continued for quite some time until recently, where we've seen Russia basically make this deal where they can be the protector. Now, in between that, just very quickly, you had people like Omar Gaddafi in Libya. That was really, in my view, and I haven't studied it deeply, but more than a surface level. Look, this guy actually cared about his people, and he was going to go to a gold dinar and start paying, using gold in the oil realm. Boom, he's gone. And in fact, the cackling Clinton laughs about murdering somebody. Regardless, and there were others that had tried to move off of the U.S. dollar to gold standard and were severely punished for even thinking of such a thing. But as Clif said, you kind of have what I call this natural law that surfaces. I'm very fond of ending my videos with, there's nothing more powerful than the truth. And the truth is we've been screwed for centuries. I mean the collective population that's under the political class. And we're waking up. Many have been awake of it for years. I mean, I probably woke up at 16 years of age, regardless. It's not about me. But the idea being that more and more people will see it for what it is as they race to the finish line. So now I think I've answered your question. So now we're in this land of what's going to happen to the dollar if it's not the petrodollar anymore. That's being questioned by the markets. It's still the most powerful currency because it's been trusted for so darn long. And if you go to Exter's pyramid, I'm not sure if I could share my screen. The dollar, the physical paper dollar, will be the most coveted asset until people give up on it, and then the run to gold starts. And so don't, throw the baby out with the bathwater. When you see that pyramid and you see paper money just above gold, that will be, by the population of the world, the most coveted and trusted asset until it can't be trusted anymore. And once that tipping point, that change of consciousness, that reality soaks into people, the run to gold will be everybody and everyone that's awake, which probably isn't even 3% at this point. It's more, in my view, it's less than 2%, but it's not about the math per se. It's about the idea that Clif so eloquently stated, that 3% becomes 6, 9, 12. All of a sudden, everybody's running to exchange fiat fiction for physical reality, and there's just not enough to go around. So I hope I covered your question.
Yes, very good. And just to be a little bit more precise for the audience too, talk about some of the moves that the big players and the powers that be have been doing behind the scene to front run what's about to happen now, including the announcement from the Bank of the International Settlements that gold was now going to be a tier 1 asset. And tell the audience also what you're seeing on the marketplace in terms of these big institutional houses taking possession of physical gold and silver here at the most rapid clip in our history. Explain that to the audience a little bit.
Well, from the big picture, the central banks of the world have been net buyers of gold since the financial crisis of 2008. But if you are addicted to one of the financial channels and you listen to them, all they do is push U.S. stocks and basically badmouth gold. But at the same time, as I just said, the central banks are accumulating it. If you go back to the way the system really works, it's money, not fiat. And the bankers, of course, know that, but they never talk about it in the public domain. But early on, going back, I guess about 15 years now, or late, or longer, in other words, 15, 16, 17 years back, if you looked at the accounting statement of the BIS, the Bank for International Settlement, obviously to me, called the Bankers Bank, they accounted for all their subsets, their other banks, to account for their balance sheet in gold and gold only. So think about that. They didn't care how much foreign exchange you had. They didn't care what your dollar balance was. They didn't care about anything. It was how much gold did you have. So there was a no-nonsense accounting method, but that's not very well known at all. So the banks know. And that's why they have gold. It's kind of their money of last resort. And if everything blows apart, then they could go back to it. I don't think there'll be any kind of a gold coin standard, which is the most fair to the people. Although there will be, and Clif can back me up or not, and I'm certainly I'm an open-minded guy, but there will be areas that will be direct exchange. In other words, there'll be people like me that will use digitized gold and silver to make exchanges, or physical to make exchanges, regardless if it's illegal, black market, what have you. It's not going to stop some of us. But that won't be universal. There will not be that ability, in my view, because the bankers are going to do everything possible to maintain control, which means if they've got to burn it to the ground and only have one bank standing, I mean, that's kind of their attitude. So I think I hit that hard enough to give the overview that they look at gold in a much different way than the mainstream financial press would have you believe. As far as silver is concerned, no central bank really uses silver. The Russians are smart enough to know how strategic it is for implementation into high-tech fields, along with the Chinese. When I was in China at Beijing, I was pretty high up in the hierarchy of, let's say, their government circles. And they were very concerned with recycling. They didn't want to waste a gram of silver. That was their main thrust for me to help them get a handle on the silver market going forward. They were a net exporter of 100 million ounces of silver through, I forget the dates, I'm going to stab at it, probably to about 10 years ago, and then it became a net importer of about 100 million ounces of silver. So think about that. And they do a lot of the refining. And when you're a refiner or a smelter, what do? Well, you take doré or concentrate and you refine it till it's 0.999 fine gold or silver. And how do you get paid? Well, most people don't know this unless they're in the trade. You don't want fiat. Take metal. That's what you take in payment. So if you're going to take this much silver, you're going to get this much silver as your payment. So what you export into China does not 100% come back out of China, if you follow my drift. So I think I beat that horse enough. Jean-Claude, I'll give it back to you.
Okay, thank you so much for that. The next question I'm going to ask both of you, and I'll start with Clif. Hi. And for the audience members here, just so you know, we're going to get into some of the WebBot data, some of the price predictions, the temporal markers that we're seeing now, and we're also going to dive a little bit deeper with David and some of the fundamentals, what's been happening with the mine supply. And then at the later part of the show, we're going to get into the woo aspect of what silver actually is and the connection between silver and us as human beings. But before I get into all of that, we've been hearing a lot of stories for years now. You just mentioned the crisis in 2008, David. And ever since then, we've seen these articles on Zero Hedge and other places. Okay, this time it's different. And here we are, 10, 12 years later, and we're at the same place, almost at the zero bound interest rate. And we've had these powers that be show us how they were absolutely able to kick the can down the road over and over and over again. Why? So here's my question. why is this time different as we're looking at the panoply or the panorama of all the evidence you're putting together, Clif? What can you tell the audience as to why now is different?
Now is different because in the past, the deep state has been able to maintain all of its other power positions while the metals and the fiat were battling it out. So during those periods of time, they had a firm grip on the media, they had a firm grip on the political structure, they had a firm grip on military, et cetera, et cetera. Now we no longer have that. They screwed themselves. They were coming to a point where, as you say, they keep kicking the can down the road. Another way to think of it is that you're bouncing off against absolute destruction. And so they come on up in 1971 and they hit that layer of absolute destruction and they bounce off, and we can survive for a while, and then they come back and hit it again and hit it again and hit it again and hit it again. And the impetus is continually towards hitting that point of destruction because you have fiat paper and you're just magnifying this mountain of paper around real value, which is consolidated and small, and it's all fake. So the illusion must go away. Now we have a situation where they screwed themselves by putting in the COVID, by creating the pandemic. They thought they were going to be able to seize control. Unfortunately, or for them, unfortunately, the pushback was something that they did not anticipate, nor did they anticipate that the very mechanisms that they were using for control would in fact force humans to have a particular reaction that will lead to their undoing. And so here we are now where they're attempting to once again bounce us back off that wall of destruction, and they do that by mind control, by telling you that, you know, this paper has value, et cetera, et cetera. And they're not going to be able to do that because all of the other institutions that they rely on are failing. Their voice to the media, or a voice to the people through the media, is failing. No one's watching TV anymore, so they're having to battle it out on social media and the alt channels, and it is not working, and they're failing very rapidly. Just at the same time that we're now getting to the point where the political structure will be shown to be globally illegitimate in the Western world, in this Anglo-Alliance, but also France and most of Europe. We can leave Russia, India, and China out of it for the moment, right? But in this 1+ billion people in what we can think of as the Anglo-Alliance, we're going to have a very large group that's very unsettled in relation to everything, because now it has been determined that they've all been, all their votes have been stolen, and the leaders have been lying to them. At some point here in the near future, it will dawn on everybody. Well, if they lied to us about this year, how long have they been lying to us? I never voted for that bitch. You know, who did, right? That sort of thing, right? So this will bring up the point of legitimacy, and there is nothing more legitimate, nothing more sound about the state than the money that they operate on. In 1699, there was a crisis in Europe that related to gold and silver, and it was primarily silver at the time, and because that was the circulating money. And they were even still using Roman dinars at that point, right? The Roman dimes, silver dimes. And at that point, there were organized people that ran around and were thieving. And they were thieving all of the silver from the crown. So all of the kings got together and said, we can't have this. And so we're going to make it, so their mechanism for doing this was to make it illegal for men at arms to be wandering around without a king over them. And so this was basically a self-protection pact. This was the Treaty of Westphalia, and all the kings in Europe agreed that no body of armed men that is not under the control of a king shall be allowed to cross any kingdom border unassailed, and it would be assailed by all the kings around. So they were basically saying, if you raise up your own little army to overthrow that king, all the other kings are going to come and put you down, because they can't have that, because they are also threatened. And we are at another Treaty of Westphalia moment, all right? So it is much bigger than Bretton Woods. They're redoing Bretton Woods only takes us back so far in our history. We've got to go way back. We've got to go over 400 years back in order to undo all of this stuff that's been building on us for 400 years. And in my way of thinking, we're going back 6,000 years to get rid of this death cult that is at the core of the central banking and warfare model that has been dominating us all this time. But we only need think about going back to 1699, because right now, any person that cares to raise an army can go at the power elite on the social media without hindrance. So the Treaty of Westphalia has failed in the information warfare era. And so now we have what I'm calling fifth level war. It's fourth level war is the remnants of the state and people acting in a physical manner within the state environment. And I'm calling this fifth level war because anyone can decide that they are going to be a power player and get involved in this. This has huge ramifications for the destruction of the media because it's going to be assaulted from so many different levels and is being assaulted from so many different levels that its failure is imminent. That is the powers that be, the deep state's last linchpin to exposure. Once the media is no longer up there throwing chaff in front of you, you will be able to see the crime, see the perpetrators, and therefore there will be action taken. We are in a very close number of weeks to the point where action will be taken. I expect this action to be taken in the form of local arrests, where people that live around the deep state players who will be identified will arrest them on local charges and start off this wave that will alter our social order very rapidly. And in a sense, it will be the beginning of a new form of a cultural revolution where humanity is in upheaval, independent of national borders. And we may even see the dissolution of national borders in a way that we had not anticipated. But it's going to be extremely chaotic, and we're going to go back to a point where we can rebuild. And when the deep state says build back better, they did not understand how far back we're going to go because we're going to build back without them. And that, I think, means that we have to go back to our first point of solidity. So my projection is that within 3 years, you will see a constitutional or some other form of U.S. Treasury created coinage that will be accepted globally because it will be the new United States dollar, so to speak, right? Whatever we end up calling it. And it won't be the petrodollar, and it will be based on a bimetallic system. And I think at some point, silver will overtake gold.
We'll get into that. So thank you so much, Clif. And I want to recommend, we're getting a little bit of an echo. Hold on a second. Let me mute your mic here, Clif. I think it's coming from you. Okay, for the audience members here, if you want to get into this new evolutionary warfare that Clif was just talking about, please go check out this last video here to get a little bit more details on that. That was fabulously done, by the way. Thank you, Clif. Okay, David, back to you now for that same question. Why is this time different in your view?
Well, Clif already used the 400-year marker, and I thank him for that, because in my study, this currency change, this monetary change, this upheaval is not a, change the pictures on the bills or change the color or whatever, or go to all digital. This is about a once in 400-year event. And these are very rare. Obviously, how many generations are there in 400 years? So it's that kind of re-establishment of the power structure. And the power structure is usually based on control of the money supply. So that's inevitable. Exactly how it shakes out, no one knows. I know Clif had a fairly personal love for a long time. I mean, back in the George Year days, my subscribers said, "Do you know who this guy is?" I said, "Who?" And I got on there, and I've been a member ever since. In fact, I paid Clif in silver a couple of times, at least once.
Still have it too.
So we are going to go. I would not rule out. First of all, what Clif said would be my dream come true, to go to a full bimetallic standard. There's no doubt, and it's not because I'm a silver guy. Nothing works better than a bimetallic or trimetallic standard, where the market determines how many coppers make a silver and how many silvers make a gold. And Clif's spot on if you look at silver from a monetary perspective, because if you go back from the 13th century to present day, for 4,827.6 years, I'm just trying to be funny, but over 4,000 years, the gold-silver ratio never got above 20. Think about that. So the highest amount of silver you had to pay to get an ounce of gold was 20. Now it's 70, 72, whatever it is. I don't know the exact number today. The idea is very clear. that when silver is used as money and gold is used as money, and that's all they're used for, silver has a much higher value because you can value it in terms of gold. Now, the bankers pulled a fast one on everybody in 1873 and said it's only gold because they had the gold in their banks, but they didn't have that much silver. It was circulated so much that what came into the bank went right out of the bank because that was the merchant class, the miners, the farmers, us, the people building, doing things, making things happen, the real physical economy. So if you read The Wizard of Oz and understand what that metaphor is all about, it's totally about the Eastern banking establishment throwing down the yellow brick road going to the Emerald City so they could have their green paper in substitution for a hoard of gold. And if you were a Tin Man or a Scarecrow, you were one of the laborers or one of the working class. And of course, the Cowardly Lion was a metaphor for William Jennings Bryan, who has the famous speech, The Cross of Gold, which talks about why the workers are getting nailed to a cross of gold because of the banking elite taking silver out of the monetary system.
Let's also not forget her slippers in the book
were silver.
Yeah. So we're there now. And this, timing is always tough. I've called every top in the silver market. Thank you, God. Call it luck, call it skill, call it whatever. My bottom picking has not been as good. And it's tough in a manipulated market. I could use it as an excuse or not. It is a fact. But timing wise, it feels to me like Clif is correct. And I'm not going to say, first of all, that's how I feel about it, whether or not that's error or not. And it's really tough because people, excuse my arrogance, but I've earned it. They don't see the obvious sometimes. It's so obvious of what's happening throughout the spectrum, not just monetary system, but politically and geopolitically and everything else. But I don't want to divert too far. But we are very close to that throwing off the, sheep's covering and running to the finish line naked. Almost so many more people are waking up, even like family members that were basically had their blinders on. Those blinders are coming off, and maybe things are not the way I've been told on the communist news network or whatever. So
right, we'll get into that in a second here also, but I want to bring up this imagery, of course, when the curtain is pulled back. And I have to thank both of you gentlemen on behalf of myself, my family, my kids, but also our audience who've benefited from you guys pulling the curtain back over the controllers in the back room here, as is being depicted in this image here from the Wizard of Oz. So a big thank you to both you, Clif and David, for all of your decades work in pulling that curtain back. Okay, Clif, let me ask you here, part of the excitement of the show, reading the comments from my video yesterday, and since I've been trying to get the show together with you guys, was the excitement about this old WebBot data report. I believe it's one of the Bare Naked Wealth reports, which was probably the anchor for everyone here in Normie Land to understand that there was a prediction out there of a $600 per ounce silver. Can you explain very quickly what those WebBot data reports were all about, how you got into that number, why numbers were difficult, and let's time in and plot some of those temporal markers from way back when that are happening right now.
Okay, so an anomaly occurred within the data sets back in the first run in 1997. The anomaly was a small one. It went unnoticed by me for a couple of years, and then I tumbled to it, and that there was a connection between silver and the sun disease. Okay, silver is thought of as a moon-associated metal. It is not thought of as a solar-associated metal. That's the gold. This is an inherent, deeply held context and concept within humans that is basically unspoken. You see it occasionally written about in the esoteric literature and so on, but most people just they will react to silver the same way that they react to the shiny moon, so to speak, if you were to set up an experiment, but they would be unaware of this. So there is this inbuilt association for humans with silver and gold in a particular way. It showed up in the data sets connected to the sun, and that didn't make sense when I started looking at it in 99. And so as it went forward in the first couple of years, of the reports, like say up to 2003, that was when I was wrestling with the issue of numbers. Okay, the whole internet is nothing but numbers. So while numbers are indeed psychically potent and psychically produced by humans, unbidden from psychic intuition and so on, numbers in and of themselves, because they're in a limited set, 1 through 9 plus 0, are bound to repeat. They're bound to be constantly in our environment. So I had to work out a mechanism for basically throwing them all out, because they were just cluttering up everything. So what I did was to resolve down to the point where no numeric value was going to be accepted through my processing that was not contextually structured as a language. So it had to be written out. So instead of the numbers showing up, I had to write, it had to show up as the word 12 instead of the digits 1, 2, or it had to show up as a dozen, some other language modifier as opposed to a numeric, because the numerics were they're just everywhere. You know, they're in IP addresses. They just pop up all the time in the sweeps, etc. And so it was at that point that I started seeing, and that would have been like 2003, when I set up the framework that way, the discrimination part of it, I started seeing silver escalation, silver with numbers showing up far more than gold. Occasionally I would get some outrageous number, you know, $10,000 for gold, something like that. But for every one of those, I would get 50 or 100 or 600 or 700, depending on the run, numeric values associating with silver. So silver was much more numerically sensitive in terms of how it came through the data associated to written out words. There was over the course from 2003 to 2008 or so, we had this consistent repetition of this the initial $600 came in year 2000. It was repeated in 2001. I think it was again repeated in 2002 and 3, and then it came in a flurry, 2008, 9, so on, right? And then it started getting associated with this, as of that point, unnamed, unknown, new financial instrument. Not a system per se, but I knew that there was something showing up ever since like 2003. I knew we were going to get a replacement. A new form of money was coming. Didn't have a clue. Then we get Bitcoin, and then we started getting the off to the races of the cryptos connecting to silver and gold. And so they naturally, within the data since about 2008, even before Bitcoin was named, even before the white paper was released, I had data sets consistently associating silver and gold with this new form of something that would come on out. And we are now at this point where we have cryptocurrencies that are also acting as a storehouse of wealth and forming a lot of the same kind of features as we see with the silver and the gold. So there was this naturally arising association that came through there. The $600 value has persisted ever since 2000, and it has just gotten reinforced. It is not a final dollar value or anything. I soon lost interest in the actual numeric value of it because I got so much shit for people saying, "Oh, you're crazy, it'll never happen." But what was more fascinating was the progression of silver over the course of time, from that point of $600 and going into this point where we actually really look at silver as the metal and discover that there's two forms and that one is superior to the other for some unknown, as of this point, technical use that will propel that form of silver to a very high demand, simply because of this naturally occurring, whatever it is about this particular kind of silver that is unique. And I don't know that if we can manufacture silver into that form or not. This was never examined in the data sets. I ran into all of the problems in 2015 with the pollution from the blue chicken cult. And so it started degrading from that point relative to the amount of detail I was able to pick up. However, we're here now. We've had a number of the technical and temporal markers. Okay, so there was a technical marker that said that the $600 silver would be associated with the $64,000 Bitcoin and cut in half and then coming back up, and the $100,000 Bitcoin parties. And at the same time that we were having $100,000 Bitcoin parties in this December winter period of time, we would also be having these people that would be doing their intergenerational wealth planning based on the hoards of silver they have. So in other words, people will discover that, oh, geez, you know, I've been an idiot, and over these past years, it hasn't really mounted to anything, but I've got a couple of hundred bars of silver here, right? And all of a sudden they find out, geez, I'll be able to pass this on to my children's children's children, and it will still have a major value at that stage. So they'll start thinking in a different way. That was what showed up in the data sets, was the alteration of our thinking relative to the context change of humanity. This is how big this is, right? This is not simply a financial system crashing. This is not a fiat currency that's going to die away, get burnt out, and rebuilt the way the Economist would have it shown, right? The Economist magazine idea that, oh, well, those fiats will go away and we'll replace it with our new fiat, this digital fiat thing, right? It's not going to happen that way. This is the upending of humanity and the changing of humans in a way that will remove the deep state, and it will remove the deep state's manipulation and obscuring of our true wealth. Because bear in mind that the deep state has been stealing from us consistently and continuously and increasing the level of theft year after year after year after year through debt slavery instruments, through interest, through all of these mechanisms, to the point where we are beggars in a land of plenty from our own labor. You're muted.
Sorry, I was trying to avoid the echo there. Thank you so much for that, Cliff. I really appreciate that segment there. And I want to bring up this for the audience. This was the Soaring 20s report here, and you allude in here also to sci-fi world. So this will be our last segment. We'll get into the woo here very shortly. But I want to ask David now also, let's put in some fundamentals to what we're seeing here in some of these predictive linguistics, whether it's $600 silver or eventually even parity. Many people have been talking about that, even perhaps also Jim Sinclair. When he looks at what's happening now, he says that silver will be like gold, but like on steroids. So speak to the audience here about what's happening now in mining supply, what we're seeing in the silver to gold ratio, and perhaps also these stories, if you want to tie them in, of these hidden hoards of gold that are perhaps in the Grand Canyon and other places around the world, and how that might affect also that silver to gold ratio in the short term here.
Okay, again,
I brought the silver guru for a reason.
Okay. No, I think I got it. I'm no dummy. I don't think I'm as smart as Clif, but I think I got it all in my head. So I think the first most important point to make is the $600 silver, because it resonates with me in a very interesting way. And I don't know exactly, I actually have a pretty good concept of how the big idea. I certainly couldn't write the program that Clif did, but I know it's sets within sets, and I got a pretty good idea, because the early Alta reports, you had to have a pretty good brain to sit there and look through the set structure to find out what was really the linguistic pattern that was making the most sense and how many times that word showed up. So, I go back with Clif a fair amount, and so I digress to come back. If you take a $50 silver in January 19th, 1980, and you use John Williams' methodology, which is the old way of calculating the CPI, guess what you get? $600 silver. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. John puts it on his website. I've used that chart all over the world. I said, if you inflation adjust $50 silver in 1980 to today and use the old methodology, it comes out 600. So there's that. So the gold silver situation, as I said in the last segment, is that the natural ratio of gold to silver is roughly 10 to 1. That does not necessarily mean that the monetary ratio has to be 10 to 1, although I said for thousands of years it was 20 to 1 or less, and usually hung around the 10 to 1 ratio average for most of those thousands of years when they were both money and money only. So in the interim, the amount of silver that is available in investment form is actually less than gold. A lot of silver has gone into landfills, it's been used up, it's sitting in flat screen TVs, membrane switches, automobiles, refrigerators. I could talk for an hour on every place silver is hiding that people don't really think about. If it were used as a monetary asset, then the ratio would have to adjust to how much silver would buy gold or vice versa. So I think we are seeing silver at a very undervalued price. I think as its relationship to gold is established in a monetary realm, which is the one place that the controllers really can't control, you're going to see this ratio diminish from the current 70-something down to 16 to 1, like the classic ratio, or maybe 10 to 1, or maybe 5 to 1. I don't know. Could it reach parity? I wouldn't say it couldn't. You know, it's more valuable. I mean, I have to laugh about President Johnson when he said it was too valuable to be used as money. I thought money was supposed to be valuable. But anyway, I digress. What else is in there, Jean-Claude? Bring me back. We talked about the 600. We talked about the ratio we have. And to reiterate what I said before, nothing would be better for the populace worldwide than to have, a bimetallic or trimetallic standard that we could all trust and wouldn't have to depend on the bankers. I'm just maybe a little reticent, more so than Clif, and I don't want the words in his mouth. Believe me, I respect him way too much. That it's going to be a war. I mean, I think the war of all wars is the coming battle is all about monetary. It's about control, and it's primarily good and evil. I mean, it's not left, right, or red, blue, or any of that nonsense. It's about good versus evil. That's what it's about. Mm-hmm. And if you believe what I believe, and I think I'm aligned with Clif, is that the natural law, the universe itself, has a way to get justice. I mean, you know, what is the MLK statement? You know, the arc of the universe bends slowly, but it bends towards justice. And we've had too much crap from these overlords for too frickin' long.
Right.
And this bend is coming to justice as far as I can tell. And again, agreeing with Clif, I think it isn't that far in the future. I certainly expect to live through it. And it's going to be hard, but it's going to be valuable, because the lessons learned, hopefully, by that, the generations that lived through that, hopefully will be so ingrained that we will have, you know, what the ideal of, you know, self-governance of the people, for the people, and by the people, and not these overlord greedy MFs that are just have been on top of us for so long. So
right,
I covered your answer. If not, give me some feedback.
Okay, just a little bit more. I wanted you to talk about the current mining supply, the fact that we have this silver deficit yearly now, and put that into context with the investment demand now that is going through the roof, and the industrial demand that's also going through the roof. Just to put into context the technical analysis here that might support this $600 silver or parity with gold once the emperor is resolved to have no close. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Okay, so the natural ratio really started in 1300, it's about 12 to 1. Now it's 9 to 1. What that says is that it's harder and harder to find economic silver out of the ground. So that's point number one. Point number two is the mining supply. It's been flat to decreasing slightly over the last, I think, 5-6 years. I have to look at a chart. That's pretty accurate. You got the idea. So we're actually mining a little bit less silver year over year the last few years, 5, 6, 7 years. The other part is demand. Now, the demand back 20 years ago was 35% of all silver demand was industrial demand. But also 20 years ago, our total mining supply was 550 million ounces. So let's think, people, come on, this is basic, like this is 6th grade or less arithmetic. It's not hard. So now go to 20 years forward. So go to last year. The mine supply was 850 million ounces. So we've gained 300 million ounces of mine supply on an annual basis from 2 decades ago. And the industrial demand is 55%. So think about it. Would you rather have 1% of $1 million or 1% of $1 billion? Okay. So we're looking at over half of the demand of a much bigger number. All right, so there's that. Now, let's just stay on the industrial side. Recently met through the Silver Institute a gentleman named Matt Watson. He does his own independent analysis, bright guy, and dive deep with him, and actually had him on my mastermind series. He projects that in the next 10 years, based what we see in the electronic realm, new cars, EVs, etc., that the industrial demand alone for silver will be in the 80% range.
Wow.
Okay, so Are we still going to have silver jewelry? Probably. Are we still going to have silverware? Yeah, probably. Are we going to have investment demand? And that's the kicker, right? So now let's get real, really real, because this fits into what Cliff's been saying the whole time, the way I understand what Cliff is saying. He can give me feedback and correct. Any market moves on the margin. So it's the last bidder at Sotheby's that gets the Picasso, right? It's, 27.8 million. Someone says, screw it, it's 50 million. No one outbids them. They get it. Okay. That's how markets work. So the margin at the silver market is by people that invest in silver and usually put it in their safe or whatever, spend it, trade it, whatever. So this demand of silver has been suppressed ever really from my studies from the 1873, where the bankers told us it wasn't money anymore, it was only gold. And that mindset kind of carried over. And then when it was taken out of circulation in 1965, unless you're my age or Cliff's age or around that age, you never even saw silver coinage. So the idea has been suppressed more and more and more, and it's only an industrial metal, and even people in the silver community are saying that it's not money. And I don't really care. Silver doesn't care whether it's thought of or money. It's whatever the market does. So here's the market. If you go to January 2020, there's a gentleman there named Scott Maynard that runs Guggenheim. He's the chief investment officer, and this guy spits it out. In fact, excuse me, Scott, and I hope you don't mind, but honest to God, to me, you sounded like me. I mean, this guy just spit it out. Bloomberg asked him, what is the go-to investment at the World Economic Forum, better known as Davos in 2020? And he said silver, and the guy almost fell off his chair. Silver, why not gold? And Scott said, because gold is pretty near its high, but silver's 60% off from its high. It's a better value. Well, now let's look at what's the old adage, proof's in the pudding. It's like, don't tell me, show me. So let me show you. In 2020, it was the highest investment demand for silver, bar none, probably since records were kept. So remember, the industrial demand's over half. Well, the investment demand in 2020 was more than half of the market. It's never been that. Usually it's 10% maybe. No, more than 50%. Where was it? Two places. Retail demand, which is guys like you and me that buy silver rounds, silver bars, silver 100-ounce bars, occasionally the 1,000-ounce bar, but it's people buying silver. Institutional demand is the Warren Buffetts that buy 1,000-ounce bars like a rich person would buy 100-ounce bars. And there was over 320 million ounces of physical silver bought by institutions in 2020. Wow. Biggest by far. 200 million round numbers bought by retail. So you have 530 million ounces of silver going to investment in 2020. So you keep that up for a few years, and $600 silver isn't going to be that hard to achieve.
Wow. Thank you. Okay, there's a reason I brought the silver guru on. I needed to have those numbers, and I'm sure the audience is just like me now, on the edge of falling off of the chair with those numbers. Thank you for that one. Cliff, let me redirect you here also to add to this. Maybe it's a little bit more on the woo side than the technical side, but speak to this idea and perhaps some of the language that you have seen that might support the theories out there that there's actually a lot more gold than we are led to believe. Can you speak to that a little bit here to the audience and how that will affect this ratio?
Yeah, that's quite factual. The thing is, you have to consider this as well. Yes, the Grand Canyon is locked up and no one can mine there. Yes, you can easily go and pan gold out of even the small lower North Snake tributary river to the Colorado River. I've done this, okay? I've actually been on a beach there and panned gold and got like a quarter ounce of flake in maybe 25 minutes. It's just all over in the sand down there. So, but wherever you find gold, you're going to find silver. So if we have giant quantities of gold, we probably also got some giant quantities of silver. There are some areas, maybe the Grand Canyon is one of them, but also Shasta Mountain in California, where the silver ratio to the gold there is very low. But you do find this stuff called electrum, which is this naturally occurring alloy of gold and silver. It's very rare itself. So we have gold all over the place. Alaska is just full of it. You can go to the beaches in Nome, way the hell up on the Siberian side of Alaska, and you can pan gold. You can suck up the black sand, and the gold just falls out as you're sucking it up. It is there because it is washing out of all of the mountains around in Alaska. So there's vast quantities of gold around. This is not really an issue. We're restricted from mining it because it is not in our rulers' interest that we be free men, and free men have their own currency. They want us to be debt slaves, so they want us to use the debt slave currency. But you can go find gold and silver. Silver is difficult to mine. Let's be realistic about it. It takes a lot of sophisticated engineering and knowledge. Gold is a lot easier, but we can find it and it won't be a problem. Just on the woo side, let me point out something here that is just really weird. I've thought about this for years. I keep thinking to mention it, but I never have. But I had this friend of mine that was a silver smelter in the Ukraine, and he's since passed on. And this guy was really great. I talked to him through the 90s and the 2000s, and he actually had made, as Mr. Silver was saying, when you refine it, you get to keep a piece of the action, right? So over the course of time, my friend in the Ukraine had built himself a silver throne. Okay, a chair that he had poured, a labor of love, and it was just out of his take on silver. He was a consolidating metallurgist for the Ukrainians in the sense that he would refine whatever the government brought him to refine. And he did copper and all these kind of things. But anyway, this guy went and he had, before he passed, he had a whole series of MRIs. And in one of the first ones he had, these magnetic resonance imaging, right, where he had passed of a weird kind of cancer in his brain. Anyway, he discovered something. He was very fearful and so on, and he had a talisman. And this talisman was basically his silver rabbit's foot. And whenever he had that in his hand, he was not supposed to take it in. You're not supposed to have metallics, even though this is non-magnetic. It was 99.9999% pure silver. But whenever he had it in his hand, when they were doing that, the 10th cranial nerve would light up in his brain. And so he actually was able to demonstrate, and he sent me at the time, and this would have been a number of years ago, maybe 10 years ago, he sent me a digital image of this MRI thing of that nerve lighting up when he had that silver talisman in his hand during this process. And he would, sometimes the energy were so intense that he would actually get small levels of burns from holding the silver. So this was one of the many confirmatory things that I know that silver induces a response in humans. And we've seen this in other, I won't go into them, but there's hundreds of tests that show that this occurs. And this is why I say that silver is a time-sensitive metal, because Kozyrev, this brilliant astrophysicist, worked with his biologist friends, and they determined that the 10th cranial nerve is that nerve that connects humans to time. And curiously, that's the one that lights up when you've got your silver. If you're affected by silver, that's what's happening. It's actually affecting that 10th cranial nerve. Now, how weird is that, right? How woo is that? And then one last thing is that I expect to still be proven right that the reconstituted government of the United States, after the war with the deep state is over, I still am of the opinion that they will hunt down and find Reggie Middleton, and we will go to a Veritasium created, his DeFi understanding, tying cryptos to gold and silver for the newly constituted republic.
Wow. And yes, that was the prediction that at some point the government would come hat in hand to Reggie after making his life horrible here in the last couple of years to ask him to fix some of these broken systems. You and I have talked about that on the show, and I've had Reggie on about that too. And it was funny because I had a few psychics in the last month take a read on that, on whether or not this prediction would come true, and hands down with big arcana cards they all said yes. So again, we're just putting in some more woo here for the audience, but I'd be curious to know if Reggie's actually perhaps in some of those conversations right now. And
I'm sure it's too early. We're going to have to go through the great upheaval and the die-off before we get into being able to stand up and speak as adults about all of this. Because bear in mind that when I stand up and I start talking about space aliens and all of this kind of stuff, the deep state and all their minions attempt to infantile me, to make me appear to be someone whose brain is not functioning adequately, right? And so we have to get rid of these people before we can stand up and actually discuss things as adults. And there's something that we can go into at some other time, but boy, there's so much adult conversation that needs to be had.
Right. And it's just around the corner for a lot. Okay. So folks, we're going to get in here very quickly to the sci-fi world and perhaps how the Trump Space Force ties into all that. And also this dual nature of silver and how we are affected by that. This will be the last segment here. Before I do that, I wanted to play this quick 50-second clip from Andy Sheckman from Miles Franklin Precious Metals. He was so excited that I was interviewing you guys the other day, and he wanted to take part in all of this action. So let me play this clip from Andy Sheckman.
Everybody, this is Andy Sheckman. I'm sure you've seen me as a regular guest on JC's show. Out of deep admiration and respect for the guests tonight, for David Morgan and for Clif High, Miles Franklin will be offering, and the overWoo, don't forget about that, we will be offering the 2021 Noah's Ark as a special price for this show and everyone listening at $3.25 over the price of silver. The very, very, very best price in the United States. It's just my way of saying thank you for the work that Clif and David are doing, for all that they're giving out and the information to help us all get to where we need to be in these crazy times. So God bless you all, David and Clif and JC. Live long and prosper. And thanks for letting me play a very small part in this very important message.
Well, thank you so much, Andy. And folks, you can find that special at beyondmystic.net/silverwoo. Now back to the show. Yeah, so live long and prosper. Andy was proud of that one, to get that one into. We had to record that a few more times to get that just right for you guys. So a big thank you from Andy.
Yeah, thanks much to Andy.
And folks, again, that's it's a different coupon code than you usually go to. So again, here, just for clarity, it's beyondmystic.net/silverwoo. That is where you're going to find this specific discount here for this particular episode. Again, gracieuseté de mon ami Andy at Miles Franklin. So thank you. Okay, Clif, let's go into overdrive. In our last video, I kind of hinted at this and you said, oh, GC, we're going to blow the minds of all the normies here if we get into this. Let's get into this now. And I want to get David to chime in also. But let's talk about what happened with this idea here of maybe bringing back on the books what ostensibly has been off books for many years. This is perhaps one of the strategies here behind the Space Force, but how you see some of the predictive linguistics tying perhaps silver to our ability and our capacity or efficacy to actually go into space and to meet our space brothers and perhaps also fight the bug. Let's get into that.
Okay, well, keep the flag there, because what do you see? Silver, right? Okay, the United States Space Force is the 11th combatant commander. Okay, there's 11 of these guys. And the Space Force is the pinnacle of the SOC. So the SOC that began operating with Kennedy's death produced the Space Force officially under Trump. It came out of the shadows. It was the first aspect of the SOC to emerge and declare itself. All right, so we're going to see others along that same way as we go forward, probably very rapidly, probably December onward. We will see we have to go through a couple of major crises. As these major crises unfold, the destruction of the past will occur, and we will literally no longer believe stuff that had been factual in all of our lives for 40 or 50 years. So it will come out that the deep state killed Kennedy. It will come out with surety. It will come out that they assassinated Martin Luther King, that they killed Malcolm X, all of these people. This will come out but it is not the main driving force. It is going to simply be ancillary to all of the stuff that's going to come on out about the illegitimacy of that deep state. That will affect everything so fundamentally that it will be the propulsion into sci-fi world, because as of that point, the paradigm has totally been subsumed in the woo. And we're now all in there, and we can decide to recreate the world as we should want it created, right? We shall do as Buckminster Fuller said, and we shall envision and invent the future. We shall invent that which we want to replace the old deep state. And we're at that point now. I literally think we are within, I know we are within days of a major eruption of activity, major emotional eruptions. And I know that we are within probably 2 weeks of another one of these aspects of the SOC emerging, okay? And it'll probably be in the political realm. And then shortly thereafter, there will be a new SOC, that it will be a new portion of the SOC that will be emerging, that will be within the financial realm. And that will be at the point that we're having that major financial crisis sometime around October 15th. It may happen before then because events are starting to pile on and magnify and accelerate. And so that's the way it is within time, that there are these sort of events held in the time gel, if you will. And if you have a suction, if you're eating up the events in your consciousness, you can propel them to come forward in a sense. And that's a description that will fit to what's going to happen. As we consume this and get more involved in it, the events will seemingly rush forward. And then we're going to hit this point where we're going to run into the silver wall. And at that point, we're going to be reintroduced to the concepts that are sci-fi world. That is, the flying vehicles, all of these kind of things, all of these things, all of the potentiality that we have been envisioning for all of my life will be apparently able to be created by us because the blinders will be gone and the restraints will be gone with the deep state going. And this can be thought of as just purely practical. If you have a person making $176,000 a year and is as a Congress critter, and that Congress critter is in Congress for 40 years and yet ends up owning nominally, titularly, $179 million, then you have to say that that was corruption. And that $179 million was stolen from all of us. Mm-hmm. That was value that half of all of our Congress critters are multimillionaires. They become multimillionaires in Congress. They are stealing from us. How much can we do with that money? This is the reason that all of our social order is degrading. Plus, the CCP is trying to engineer it. But at its core, we were degrading our own social engineering from the 60s with the things we were doing with the money, creating disaffected youth because there was no opportunity for them because the money was being stolen by the Congress critters that should have been out there for them to have an opportunity to grow a life in. Right. And so this is really, for me, it is the unfairness of it all, right? I'm an honorable man, and honor demands fairness and justice. If you don't have fairness and justice, you don't have a life. Therefore, you're at the point where you must start fighting. And so I've been fighting all of my life, and all of us have, David as well. I mean, we've been in this fight for all this time. Now we are going to be joined by the multitudes, and the deep state shall fail because there are so many of us, and we're tired of it. It's just going to change.
Right. Thank you for that. In the petrodollar death series, you had mentioned in one of our live chats, you were there, that silver would potentially hit $600 per ounce when the corn would be harvested. Okay, so a lot of people took that one way, and if there's another way to that. Without going too deep into the details here, talk about that timeline and how perhaps the events unfolding now will eventually get to this particular harvest and what we mean by that.
The corn is a way to label people. These people are the agents of the deep state. They are sent to a specific place in Virginia to train. That specific place that they are sent is called the farm. Anybody who graduates from there is called a farm product. The owners of the farm are the CIA, the deep state. They train all their operatives and all of their assets through there. They are going to be harvested. These assets include people like Michael and Hussein Obama. Okay, both of those men are trained CIA assets, and many of our elected officials are in fact trained intelligence assets of this country and others. So there are two trained intelligence assets that are farm products of China, and those farm products started and run BLM, the organization. They're both trained agents out of China. They went to the China's version of the farm. So we're going to have a corn harvest. We're going to harvest the farm products. They're going to be exposed for who they are, and they're going to be removed. As that occurs, this will so shake the confidence of everyone in the normie world, in the structure of the paradigm that they know of as reality, as the deep state is exposed controlling it, that they will have an uncertainty factor that we cannot overestimate. That uncertainty will make them do all kinds of screwy things. And one of the first things of uncertainty will be their money. And so this will propel the rush into the metals in a way that is not seen within the current trading organization. So David will understand when I am going to tell him that the beginning of this, the beginning of the corn harvest, will look like the last days of the retail sales in the Hunt Brothers silver scheme.
David, do you want to add to that? You're nodding.
Oh, yeah, I know how markets move. I mean, I was there, and I've been involved in the metals since I was 11 years old in a cursory way, and then directly. But no, I mean, just to repeat, I mean, once that spark is lit, the tipping point, whatever you want to call it, there'll be a run. And I've said in the past, there'll be a run to the metals like never seen before. It'll go into the financial history books. It'll be an event that will make the Hunt Brothers situation look like a small parade relative to what's going to take place. You got to remember, in the Hunt days, really the whole silver situation was the Hunts, retail investors, people that were concerned about honest money, and some of the Saudis at the very end. This time it's global. We've got the internet. People can buy silver with the click of a mouse now. And with the advent, and I think this is the next leg up, is the cryptos that are gold and silver backed, because now places that pay huge premiums like Japan, for example, or even throughout most of Europe where they have the value added tax, which is prohibitive to buying silver. Gold, no VAT. Silver, huge VAT. Why? Well, think about it. So with the advent of these cryptos that are silver and gold backed, it's easy to buy it at a modest premium, a normal premium, let's call it, that the market determines, rather than paying the government 17% for the privilege of owning silver.
Right.
So there'll be so many vectors of ability to purchase precious metals that when that gun goes off, as a metaphor, and people run to the metals, again, I think it'll go in the history books. I think it'll be phenomenal. Believe me, it doesn't have to be half the population, as Clif and I've reiterated back and forth. 1%, 2%. Right now, I would say that about 1% of the world's population financially is in the silver market in any substantive way. I mean, it's not people that got one silver round for their birthday. Maybe I'd say, 20 ounces or more. If you look at the whole financial system in terms of fiat, the amount of gold is about 1.5% of the whole system. The amount of silver, please buckle your seatbelt and listen carefully, is 0.02%.
Mm-hmm. Bringing back Exeter's pyramid here for a visual there. You can't even see that little silver at the bottom there. That's how small it is. Thank you for that, David. I wanted to do this episode. You guys have been absolutely fabulous. I want to end on a positive note, and I also want to step away from the fear factors. Some people listening to this for the first time might be triggered a little bit by some of the warnings that we have here and the temporal markers that are hitting us now. So I want to move people away from that fear and to empower them. Now, David, in our last interview, you mentioned that your mom was scarred from the events of the Depression and the war, and how that affected her generation moving forward. Can you speak to that now? What Clif is saying now is going to be just around the corner, and how we are going to be affected on one hand, but how we can be empowered to get into that sci-fi world where we are actually living in abundance, as opposed to the fake a situation that we find ourselves here now, where there's scarcity and we are led to believe that we only live in scarcity. Speak to that for the audience here, please. David, thank you.
Okay, well, my dad was born in 1930. My mom was actually older than my dad by I think about 4 years. So, the Depression really didn't end until World War II. So my dad had it pretty good. They moved in with their grandparents on the farm, and most of my life, I thought the farm was like this 100-acre thing. And after my grandmother passed away, we found out it was like a quarter of an acre. But that's all they needed to have chickens and rabbits and grow vegetables, and they did really relatively well. My mother's family, that side of my family, was not as fortunate. 4 kids. My grandfather was a grocer, so they got like stuff that was going to be tossed, but it affected them more harshly. And my mom just carried that over. I mean, as I said on your last show, I think I said, my mom would never throw a rubber band off of the newspaper away. I mean, she collected them. I think we had a whole garbage bag full of rubber bands, right? That was just her mindset, that you could take something and reuse it. Something might be needed. If you had an abundance of those rubber bands and your neighbor needed them, you could give them to them gladly. And of course, you're a kid, so you're watching your parents and you're seeing how they, react to life. And so that's kind of an outline for it. I think to go on and get on the philosophical side, which I really love to do, and I've said this before, but it bears repeating, is money to me, and I've studied it most of my life, represents the one thing that most humans want, and that's security. You want certainty in your life. You want to be sure that I'll be able to live out in my old age without having to stress about being able to pay for things, or I'll have, an education for my kid, or whatever it is. But it gives that idea of, financial stability means stability in life. And there's no financial stability in the current system. In fact, it's apparent to the most casual observer that we are in a world of disarray in all systems. So coming back to philosophically, so it's more about you being than you having. So what does that mean? And that means the old adage, the Oracle of Delphi, what's the key to life? It's to thine own self be true. If you don't understand your innermost being, your innermost self, and most people don't, in my opinion, then no amount of gold is going to save you. You could have no gold and a great being and the ability to communicate and work with others in very harsh conditions and survive this thing. And so I think, again, it's going to be a reassertion of values from the universe, saying what is valuable. Relationships are valuable. Human ingenuity is valuable. Money will be useful, but skills for food, shelter, communication, and there'll be things that, I've thought this through, and not deeply, but I've given it some thought. What's the use of some old critter out there that's part of the tribe? But, I think it's the wisdom. I think it's passing on. And of course, entertainment, there's the bards. I mean, some of the most highly prized, I guess you could say, individuals back in latter days were the people that could talk and tell stories and bring a resonance. It's more than just speaking a good story. There's a vibratory frequency that comes out for someone that's heartfelt, that goes into the tribe, that feels better just because they could actually hum or drum and pretty much give the same situation, but we've got a story that's really good and meaningful and moral that goes along with it. It's highly prized. So we all have a place. We all have abilities. Unfortunately, under the schooling system, you're taught to be a robot, not think, just do, don't question anyone or anything, and move forward. And of course, we've been moving backwards under their control for a long time. So I'm ready for the breakthrough. I'm ready for the hard times, I think. And if it wipes me out, that was what universe had designed for me. But I'm here, not as tough as Clif, but I'm still a crotchety little man. And I'll tell you, I fought the same.
Hey, you still kept your hair.
Time. So I'll hand it over to Clif.
Thank you so much, David. That really resonated with me. I appreciate that. The story of value. And I think this is where humans, for the most part, are clueless about what's really valuable. And we are all about to learn that lesson here very, very quickly. So Clif, let's talk about that. What's on the horizon here as we finish and round up the show in the next month or two? What can people expect here? How strong they need to be? Make sure they don't win any stupid prizes, and then move into the sci-fi world and all the amazing opportunities for humanity moving forward once we get this damn bug off our back. Let's think on that.
So we're gonna go back to go forward. Okay, so there's a generation now existent that does not know it's going to be the greatest generation on this planet. We're going to create another great generation that existed here in the United States, only we're doing it globally. All right, so this greatest generation are pan-national. So the great generation here in the United States survived the Depression and went through World War II and created that world. We're in the process of forming another one of those generations that is going to fight this war with the deep state, that is going to fight this war with the CCP, that is going to win that war, go through the depression of the crash of the fake economic system, or the fake financial system, and come out with a real economic system and create sci-fi world. So this greatest generation that is basically walking around pretty much numbnuts now is going to be bitch slapped, and it's going to grow up very, very, very rapidly. So the great generation in our history were stupid, okay? They were really dumb kids. They went through the 1918 pandemic, and they came out into the roaring 20s. And they drank, they smoked, they did ether, they discovered marijuana, they discovered morphine. They went crazy with parties and everything because of the 2.5 years of isolation of the pandemic in 1918, which also had its own fake virus fake vaccine causing a lot of the deaths. But we go on. That generation, at the time that they were out there partying, did not know that what they were facing. They did not know that they were going to go through this depression and recreate the planet. That is the people that we're living with now, right? They're younger than us. They don't understand. They're going to just try and raise hell and have a party because they've been isolated for so long. Now, the harshness of this greatest generation is that it is going to be global, and they're going to have to accomplish from 1923 to 1945 in about 2 years' time. So there will be great many people that will not survive this, but there will be giants of humans that will be emerging from this. We will have people now that are stupid, ignorant kids that are annoying their parents and everyone around them that will come out to be the greatest leaders you've ever seen because of what they're going to survive. And these individuals are going to create sci-fi world because they will not have the constraints that have been overlaid on us by the central bank. Okay, so I have patents, but I will never ever file for another patent in the United States or any other government under these conditions because that system is corrupt. Everything I do for filing a patent is siphoned off into the system and put into the corporations, and I am left without anything from all of my efforts. So why should I feed my enemy? I don't do anything on YouTube. Why should I feed my enemy, right? That is all going to go away as this generation encounters these difficulties. They will recreate the civilization in a way that does not exist now. And because of the things that they will remove, the things that they won't put back there, we will get this combinoric effect where ideas will bounce off each other and we will all make it all grow, and we won't worry about the debt slavery idea that you've got to do it for the fiat currency. The universe provides, universe guides. You are rewarded for adding value to universe. Even if you don't know how that reward is going to be coming back to you, it will come back to you. That's the way that this universe works. I'm living proof of that. And so we will be doing things in a different way and accomplishing a great deal more because the constraints will be off of humanity. This, in my opinion, will be this upcoming period of time. And I can't say on what day it will start. We won't know that day except in hindsight, but I will probably live through it. This will be the day in which humanity will be freed of this 6,000-year-old death cult that has been warping us and feeding off us for all of those years. And that has caused so much misery. And we can cause misery and be buttheads and all of that, but at least we'll do it on our own and we'll learn and keep going. And we won't have these people, this cult, controlling us anymore. And we are literally in this period of time where tomorrow, the day after, all of these things will start be stacking up as this death cult goes down. And it's going to be scary for the kids, right? They're just totally ignorant of it now. It's going to come on up and slap them. But this is the way it is with all generations. And we're here now because we desired to be here now to experience this. And, you know, like I say, we're going to be watching the greatest generation ever emerge out of the troubles now. So probably we could all look around and pick someone that's, you know, the kid there that's just picking his teeth and doesn't really know what's going on or anything. And you say, oh, well, geez, he's going to end up being a governor. You know, he's going to be a mayor or whatever, right?
A little bit down the street.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where we're at now, guys. It's extremely exciting to me. I did not expect to live this long to see any of this. I thought I would be in those generations of prophets that die before the promised land, right? And so I was fortunate. Universe has decided that, you know, I'm rewarded in this. Well, it rewards me with more work, but hey, I'll take it. because we're there now, and this is the fun part, guys. So this is the part that you just enjoy. Now, it's horrific and it's terrible, and there will be great deaths and so on, but there is joy to take out of this, because in the process of the dying is the rebirth.
Very good. Thank you so much, Clif, for that. And I wanted to echo my sentiments also as a warrior, as a student of Kung Fu and San Shu. I know it's important right now to be in fighting shape, and I've been working on my body and my upgrades here in the last couple of months to face what is just around the corner. So can you speak to the audience how you also saw these times coming, and how you concocted as an herbalist here this pure sleep product, and how that can help people not just sleep, but also repair their bodies so that they can move through the next couple of months here and years in better ease?
So we only repair our bodies during sleep. If your body only grows while you're sleeping. And so if you're doing anything, if you're active and you're conscious, the most your body will do will be triage to prevent you from getting further damage, because it waits for sleep to repair. And so tumbling upon this idea and having had the cancer, I knew I needed to repair my body. So I needed to induce the maximum possible human growth hormone production overnight that is naturally available to me. And there are things you can do, and I put elements in Pure Sleep to boost human growth hormone production, because it is that growth hormone that allows you to repair your muscles and your limbs and heal the sutures and all of that kind of thing. And additionally, I put in material in there, things that have been used for thousands of years, like nutmeg, and these other elements that will allow the mind to be present and effective. And that means that when you wake up in the morning, you are not burdened by the remnants of sleep. So you wake up without a hangover. So I actually know people that are drinkers that take my Pure Sleep so they don't have a hangover in the morning. I don't recommend it, but it actually does work, because it provides the human growth hormone and all these other elements, but then it also provides this positive lift so that you have a good attitude when you wake up. Now, the world can still be shit, but you know, you're prepared to get up and deal with it. And so I'm probably one of the best. I released it to the public. I used it for well over a year before I even thought about releasing it. And then it took us about a year to get it into a form that we can get it out there. I'm working with Pure Bulk, so Timothy McNulty's bodybuilding company, and they're just great. But I have gone from 128 pounds, and I'm now at 172 pounds, and I've got a very low BMI.
Yeah, fabulous. Well, thank you for that, Clif. And folks, if you want to support our channel also by using the affiliate link, just go to beyondmystic.net/shop, and there you'll find the link to Clif High's Pure Sleep. You can also find Clif on his BitChute channel here at Clif_High, and also on a daily basis on Twitter, for as long as official wants him there. That's also Clif_High. And now, if you want to read up and get into even more details about the history of silver and how absolutely amazing it is, please consider supporting David here by purchasing the Silver Manifesto. You can do that at thesilvermanifesto.com, or you can also become a member here of his newsletter at the Morgan Report. David, let's talk to the audience here about what they can expect here on your membership and your mailing list.
Well, there's two services. There's a free one and a paid one. The free one is obviously free. I do what I call the weekly perspective. I usually go through the financial news primarily, and then move into the metals. I usually leave at the metals and try to keep it around 15 minutes. This is for very busy people that kind of want a quick look from, I guess you could say, an alternative perspective, and then move on. And then there are other things on there, like interviews I do that are public, that I put on that mailing list. So it's just a one-stop shop to get a bunch of free information. You could also go to the channel there you're showing, the YouTube channel, or on themorganreport.com, you can go to the blog, which puts most everything that I do on there for free. As far as the subscribe pull-down menu, you can read the sales letter of basically what we do. And there's a video that goes along with it that talks about, this is someone that's pretty much in the equity market. We do most of our work through mining shares or resource stocks. I mean, some of our biggest gains have been in molybdenum, for example, or cobalt, or copper, or whatever. Silver, of course. Right now, it's mostly silver, gold, uranium, and a couple of what I call asymmetric trades that are leading the industry, but the stocks haven't performed yet. On electronic waste, you can get more gold out of a printed circuit board ground up and precipitated than most gold mines are mining at right now. So it's one of those things that is unknown. I'm glad I got to laugh at it. It's very interesting, but I'm about the only analyst on it because it's all the way the whole system is, and I'll just moan and complain just another minute, but I mean, no one wants to be first, right? A leader's when everyone's jumping off the cliff because the king told them to do so, and the leader's the one saying, I'm not following that freaking king. I'm going over here. The whole line watches that one person drifting off, and then someone in the line goes, you know what? I think that guy's got a good idea. I'm getting out of this line. I don't want to jump off a cliff. I'll follow that guy. So a new leader emerges. Anyway, I digress. But we have the opportunity to interface with me. If you are a paid member, you can ask one question per month. Usually there's such good questions that I collect them and make a video for everybody's benefit once or twice a month going over those questions. And then I do updates also by video on what's happening in the market. It could be like this Evergrande situation. I think Bix was the first on the mark when it happened. I'm usually a little bit more wait and see kind of thing. Used to be the first back before the internet. I remember when Barings Bank went down, I thought that's it, it's over. And of course I was wrong. And all these things that have come up that could be tipping points that take the whole system down. I mean, Lehman Brothers got pretty damn close. So anyway, I'll quit there, but I love it still. I guess that's my point is that, you pay me, but most people think they get their money's worth, and I'm still passionate about it. I want to come across the other side. I want to go to Sci-Fi World. I want these kids to get that bitch slap, as Clif said, wake up and become these leaders. And that's the marvel of the universe. There's so much mystery out there beyond mystic that most of us don't ever stop to appreciate us. We're taught to just go with our 4 or 5 senses. Right. When there's so much more, and this intuition and the psychic ability and all that stuff is real, but most people just brush it off as, you're a gold bug.
Right. Well, there you go, folks. You can support our friend here, the Silver Guru, at themorganreport.com. And as you just mentioned, Bix also, he told us the other day that he got his second strike here for talking about silver manipulation on his YouTube channel. So there goes my idea of putting this video on YouTube as well. So I'm going to be uploading this to my BitChute and Rumble free for everyone. And of course, if you're watching us with us now, it's because you are one of our Insider Access Pass members here on my BeyondMystic.net / pay-per-view library. So please do go check that out. We have a lot of these Beyond Crypto Woo reports that Janine and I are producing that might help you also navigate these financial transitions that we're in now. And if you're interested in that Insider Access Pass, we currently have a promotion going on. It's called Stay Connected is the coupon code, and that will give you 10% off of the annual Insider Access Pass. Last but not least, please remember to support us also here by getting some physical silver in your own hands, and you can do so here for this specific episode. The premier promo code here for milesfranklin.com. Our affiliate program here are these 2021 Armenia, 1 ounce Noah's Ark silver coins at only $3.25 over spot. So please go check that out. That's at beyondmystic.net/silverwoo. And so one last time, you can follow David here at themorganreport.com, and you can also follow Mr. Clif High here at BitChute at Clif_High. Gentlemen, what a pleasure it was. Thank you so much for all of your knowledge, all of your work on behalf of humanity, on behalf of our audience, on behalf of my family. You were a big part of my awakening process, and I hope that together here we were able to, in this hour and a half here, put a video together that will serve a lot of humanity here to empower themselves as we move forward and transition into this new era here of the age of Aquarius. So a big thank you. Merci beaucoup, Clif. Merci beaucoup, David. And folks, that was the Silver Woo with Clif High and David Morgan, where the Silver Guru meets the Silver Woo. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I'm Jean-Claude Beyond Mystic, and have a great weekend. Au revoir.